most of that which we know in our life, whenever we have questions about it, how do I know it's true? How do I know it's real? The way that we come to know is we have all of these tools of science. We have microscopes. We have telescopes. We weigh something, we measure it, it's got a size, a volume, a weight. Or we're able to use our senses to know. How do I know it's real? I see it with my own eyes. I hear it with my ears. I feel it, I smell it, I taste it. So I know it's real. The dilemma comes in a very interesting irony. Those aspects of our life that are the most precious, the most deeply real, are things that actually none of our tools of science can prove to us. They don't have a weight or a volume or an area. You can't see them under a microscope or a telescope. They don't weigh anything. You can't touch it or smell it or taste it or hear it. And this is what comes up when we talk about God all the time. So here the question is about our true self. But it's the same question that we get, how do you know God exists? And the dilemma with the question itself is, we cannot use the same tools of the mind to understand that which the mind can't access. And so we've spoken a lot over the last few nights about how the mind operates only in separation. The mind operates only with the world at an arm's length. And so whenever people ask me this about God, it's a lot easier if you turn around and you say, all right, let's talk about love instead for a minute. Because love is something that most of us can relate to. More people in general have been in love than have necessarily experienced God. And yet, if I say to you, prove to me that you really are in love. Like, how do you know it's love? Doesn't weigh anything. You can't stick it on a microscope slide. You can't tell me to touch it or smell it. You can't stick something in my hands and say, here it is, look. You have absolutely no way to prove to me that you love someone. Or that even love exists. Get little kids all the time who say, I'm never going to get married. Girls have the cooties. I'll never fall in love. And there isn't any way, logically, to convince them. Fortunately, what we know, and the reason that most of us don't bother getting into fights with 8-year-olds over the existence of love or not, is we know no problem, it's all right, give them a few years. And he'll grow up and he'll fall in love and it's irrelevant. I don't need to convince him today. Because we know people will experience it. And when they experience it, then the fact that you can't weigh it or measure it or see it or taste it or touch it is irrelevant. It's what we call self-evident. I don't need a tool to make it evident to me. It is self-evident. Myself is experiencing love. I don't need evidence from the outside. I don't need a tool to make my love evident. It's self-evident. So is the self. And so when the question asks, how do we know it's not just another story our ego creates? Because the self, if we're touching it, is experienced in union, in merging in oneness. And the ego only functions the way the mind functions, which is in separation. So my identity is absolutely a story. All of the stuff my ego says to me, oh my God, you are so beautiful. Oh my God, you are so ugly. Oh, you are stupid. Ah, you're brilliant. Stories of the ego. All of them. But the actual experience of the self is self-evident. In that union, in that oneness, in that experience, I am there. It is not determined or limited by time or space. The ego constantly changes. I say the right thing. I look good. People look at me nicely. They smile. They laugh at my jokes. The ego says, yeah, we are so good. They don't look at me nicely. I say something really stupid. I forget the punchline of my jokes. People look at me like they have no idea what I'm saying. And the ego says, oh, you are just useless. So the ego is very, very fickle. And the ego's story is rooted in constant feedback from the outer world. So it's not self-evident by any means. It's evident based on the outside world. You smile at me. Ah, I must be worthy. You're nice to me. I must be someone worthy of being nice to. You're my teacher in school. You give me an A on my exam. I must be smart. I look at a billboard for designer clothes and I realize that I look really very much just like that model. Ah, I'm attractive. I look at a billboard for designer clothes and realize that in 10 lifetimes, I will never look anything near like what that model looks. I feel badly. The ego is constantly changing and adjusting itself based on cues and feedback, judgment, comparison. The self is not fickle. The self doesn't change. In fact, the self is that which is constant. So if you're touching something that's constantly changing, that's constantly rooted in external appreciation or lack thereof, that's constantly rooted in judging against others, comparing, contrasting, competing, it's ego, it's drama. But when you're rooted in that doesn't change, that is truly self-evident, that doesn't require anybody's feedback to know itself, that's real. In fact, it's the only thing we can know for real. Everything else in the world requires my 5 senses, right? I know you exist because I can see you. Now, if I close my eyes and you don't make any noise, and you're too far away for me to touch you or taste you, You don't have any prominent odor, so I can't smell you. I have no way of knowing that you exist. You are not evident to me at all. Now, that didn't change your existence. You've existed the whole time, but I have no way of interacting with existence other than my senses. Except with interacting with myself. It's actually only the self that is self-evident. I don't have to touch myself or taste myself or hear myself. I can close my eyes, put earplugs in, not move, so I have no sense of movement. That's when it gets good. And I know myself. So that which is evident without a story is the self. Where there's drama and constant change, it's ego identity. And remember though, that's not bad. We're not talking about anything in here as good or bad. It's just a different level of existence. One is a level that never changes, that's eternal. And one is this beautiful, physical, emotional, moving drama we have. And it's just another level of reality. Not nearly as permanent. It's in constant flux. But it also exists. And so we're not talking about good or bad. We're not talking about ignoring this physical, emotional, moving, dancing, walking, sleeping, eating, drinking drama. Because it's through that we actually work out our karmic packages.